It's interesting, we're all having trouble trying to get Des Moines to take Mitchell County seriously, apparently. Anyway, I've got a whole bunch of stuff I could talk all day. I'll try and be brief and to the point. A couple weeks ago, I listened to the hog industry talking points about why, we need the hog industry, and that's all fine. I understand that. That's their job. But it's also to their financial advantage. But it's to everything. There's two sides to the story. One of the things that concerned me was one of the individuals mentioned that there was no evidence of disease transmission from hogs to humans. And I went back and watched Penny's video. And this source he cited is a DNR. The DNR does not have any validity as far as zoonotic diseases. You can go watch Penny's, and it's true. So anyway, I'm going to be very brief. For each of you, here's a list of zoonotic diseases.
Thank you.
This is old. Some of it's outdated. Brucellosis, for instance, that's eradicated. That's no small part in doing that. A couple things I might mention that I think are worth a second look. I believe it's got influenza on there somewhere. We just have to think back to what happened with the Indian influenza outbreak, how it affected economics as well as potentially people. If you do a little research, you'll find that whenever you have a high concentration of hogs, birds and people, you can get mutations of influenza virus, and that's lots of problems. Another one, okay, not on there is MRSA. I mentioned that the Shannon University of Iowa publication found MRSA in aerosols over 200 meters downwind from the Cape Fold. That was as far as they tested. So when you breathe the smell, you might be breathing in MRSA. This is from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. As I say, I'm not going to bore everybody with all this. Hopefully you read it. I'll read one thing here. Researchers from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health have for the first time found an association between living in proximity to high-density livestock production and community-acquired infections with methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, commonly called MRSA. Included 11% of community-associated MRSA soft tissue infections in the study population could be attributed to crop fields fertilizer with swine manure. And this one is strep suis. It's an emerging disease. If you do a little checking, it's a big deal in Asia. There's been deaths in Europe from it. It's aerosol spread too. This is just stuff I found real quick. It doesn't take very long to find this stuff. So, that's not lobbying points, those are facts. The other thing I would take issue with was the insinuation that the hog industry today is the same as it was in the past. Now I did a little checking, and to some extent that is correct. I mean, the number of hogs in Iowa in 1978 was 14.7 million. 1997, 14.5. 2000, 15.5. So it was pretty stable. 2002, I believe, was the year the matrix was put in. In my opinion, and this is why I'm here, I think we need to look to make it together. I would ask you, as a board, to write a letter and to request our legislature, the governor, to do that. But since then, we jumped to 19.2 million in the year 2012. In the year 2015, we were up, still pretty stable from 2012, up to 20.8 million. In the last year, as of 12/23, according to the Des Moines Register, we have jumped to 22.4 million hogs. That's almost an 8% increase in 1 year. This is what we're looking at. That's a huge change. Look at bold numbers. The Prestige plant that's going in and even Grove, I believe, that Mason City turned down, will harvest 10,000 hogs per day. That's 3.65 million per year. That's why things are changing. There's also a new plant that's going into production in northwest Iowa. I didn't look at their capacity or anything, but this is what we're looking at. This is a horizon. In my opinion, we need to relook at the matrix to take into account public health, the environmental, just quality of life, and the property values of people. Now this is another Iowa's changing hog industry. That's old too, but the pertinent thing in here, you look at the graphs in the back, even though the hog numbers were the same, pretty static, up until 2002, you look at this, dots, where the hogs are located. They're not spread all over the state of Iowa anymore. They're concentrated, huge concentrations. That's what's important. So we have to look at that, in my opinion, what it's doing to the citizens of our state. Now, I'm not going to stand here or be presumptuous enough to say that somebody's going to get sick from hogs. You know, I can't say that. Nobody can. What I can say, this stuff happens. It's out there. We all know the MRSA. We all know that bacteria that have the ability to transmit resistance from one bacteria to another. Happens 1 in a million times. The more concentration we have, the more likely it's going to happen. Personally, I can't see why the hog industry wants to do this. It defies logic. One of the precepts, epidemiological precepts, for good disease control is to spread things out. And as I say, we only have to look at what happened with the avian swine flu to know what can happen from both the public health and economic aspect. So, I'm trying to be very short and brief. And I would comment on this. Now, you talked about housing here. Everybody's in agreement, you know, we need more people. Unfortunate thing is we're pitting neighbor against neighbor. The matrix is designed to pit neighbor against neighbor. Nobody wants to do it. I don't want to be up here complaining every day. But I know it's come to the point where I have to. You want houses, you talk about selling lots. I was at my attorney's last week, various issues, and I mentioned this to him. He said, oh, there's nothing you can do. He said, I do warn every one of my clients that if they put a home up in rural Iowa, there's no way they can prevent people from coming up to 150 feet from them. That's reality. How many people are going to buy those lots and put a house up when they know what's happening and they know what's going to happen? In my opinion, the best crop Iowa can grow is houses and kids, not pigs. Thank you. And I do urge you to send a letter. I really think it's important.
Well, I'm just going to endorse everything he says. I don't know if you saw today's Globe Gazette. Here's a headline from today's Globe Gazette. Anti-CAFO group to seek support will ask Worth County Board to sign a letter. So, you know, they're citizens of Worth County are getting really active. And this is 2015. Superbugs a grave global threat by 2030 due to industrial meat production. A massive global increase in factory farmed meat production by 2030 will increase antibiotic use by 67%, posing a public health threat. You can do this. It doesn't take much. Stan, you said you didn't have enough information. It doesn't take much research to find a lot of information about why there should be concern. I didn't find that particular one, but there was the Chinese and the Europeans have been using this old antibiotic they pulled off the shelf that was allowed by the medical industry to be used in animal production because they didn't really need it to treat any diseases, except that is now the only antibiotic that works on these antibiotic-resistant diseases people are getting, and now they have found bacteria resistant to that antibiotic coming from pork in China, because China uses this antibiotic a lot in their food. It's a growth, it facilitates growth in pigs, so they just put it in the feed. Europeans are using it. So, you know, they're going to think about maybe removing that from animal use, but it might just, you know, just like trying to get the MCOs to pay more, it might take a few years. And then, Dan, I know something really close to your heart is, okay, where's my article on, what do hog confinements contribute to the economy? Now, Iowa Policy Project did a report in 2007, Hog CAFOs and Sustainability, the Impact on Local Development and Water Quality in Iowa. This is just a summary of it in case you don't want to read the whole report. Some of the highlights from the summary is that counties with expanding hog numbers and CAFOs also experienced significant private sector employment growth. That expansion, however, made no positive contribution in terms of population retention, in-migration, employment of residents, or school enrollments. While industrial hog expansion may contribute to private sector regional employment, it does not appear to have any relation to demographic growth in the county in which the hog expansion occurs, considering other changes in agricultural structure and the effects of urban influence. As regards quality of life for residents, the only measure with even a modest relation to CAFO hog expansion is the growth of the proportion of non-school age adults without a high school education. Regarding social capital, an increase of hogs in CAFOs is unrelated to changes in civic engagement. CAFO expansion relates quite modestly to reduction in crime and to increases in home ownership and numbers of religious adherents. Contrary to what others found in case studies focused on the issue, growth of hogs in CAFOs seems not to have depressed the level of social capital. Perhaps in Iowa, because state law prevents localities from regulating CAFOs, mobilization against CAFO expansion has been focused on the state level, thereby diffusing local conflict around the issue. Economic viability. Hog CAFO expansion is associated with reduced core poverty, but largely unrelated to changes in median county income levels, housing values, and the share of near-poor households. Whether we measured economic development in terms of growth in retail sales, pay by local farms, or by an increase in the number of firms in the county, the effect of hog CAFO expansion was anemic. Selling prices of homes that were on the market in the 1990s declined significantly in counties where hog confinement operations were expanding most rapidly, although homeowners' assessments of the value of their homes remained steady. The relative decline in the value of houses sold in hog CAFO expansion counties may be due to the decline in housing prices near CAFOs and or to increased movement in the affordable or low housing market as new workers move into the county. It's important to remember over the past quarter century, a rather constant number of hogs produced in Iowa have been concentrated geographically, and increasing the density in some counties, decreasing density in many. Concentration has not generated local economic development in the counties where it occurred. suggesting there may be a countervailing effect of concentration. Integrated or contract feeding CAFOs often do not purchase inputs from within the county. Alternatively, one might argue that throughout much of the 90s, the oversupply of market hogs kept prices low and hog farmers had little to spend in the local economy. But it is not likely that the hog production industry as a whole substantially reduced its purchased inputs. Finally, manure production from hog CAFOs strongly and positively related to 3 of the 4 contamination measures: manure spills, fish kills, and impaired waterways, lakes, streams, and rivers. In conclusion, together, these data raise serious questions as to whether the growth of hog confinement operation in the 90s in Iowa has generated sustainable local development. Indeed, in certain parts of Iowa, the opportunity costs have been substantial. Their growth may have hampered rural tourism, recreation, and destination retirement development in certain counties of northeast and southeast Iowa that have natural amenities as well as a high density of hogs. The economic, social, and human development impacts of CAFOs are at best modest. Research on counties of Iowa and the surrounding states indicates that although growth in livestock sales has a modest positive effect on county income growth, the contribution of outdoor recreation amenities is more than 5 times as great. Because of the odor of concentrated hog manure and the negative impacts of hog CAFOs on surface water quality, recreational entities and CAFOs cannot exist cheek by jowl. Our results suggest clearly that concentrated animal feeding operations are negatively associated with surface water quality in Iowa and beyond its borders. Now, I'm just going to ask you again to really consider endorsing a resolution. I think there should be a moratorium on new CAFOs. I think we need to do a survey of how many pigs do we have in Mitchell County, since we have a growth in the hog confinements that are 1 hog under the limit where they would have to get permitted. So we really have no idea. We can say how many permitted hogs are in the county, but that, we have all those 1 pig under the limit confinement operations. That doesn't tell us how many hogs we do have in the county. And we do have at least, Gary Cooper told me after one of the meetings about the tumor that he had 20 years ago. It wasn't really a tumor, it wasn't cancer, a growth that he had. And he went to all these doctors, and when he evaluated it, it was a huge bacterial growth that he'd gotten from his hog confinement, and it wrapped around 3 of his nerves, and they had to remove that tumor. Plus the villi in his lungs were damaged from breathing the air in hog confinements. I think since then they've done a better job of filtering the air inside confinements because of problems like that. But as we know from the water that Gary brought, it's not doing anything to the water quality. And I think when you at least talked about the resolution that Floyd County passed, and it talked about karst, and I remember all these 8 or 9 Iowa Select people screaming about, well, there's no karst in Mitchell County. Well, I went to the Soil and Water Commission, and they said, well, the whole county is karst. So, I mean, I think that, people that have a vested interest in having things a certain way are going to squawk really loud about how it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Oh, there's plenty of regulation of hog confinements. People that have to live with and by the hog confinements have a different opinion, and I'm just going to encourage you to really look at just say, well, we need to look at it. I think it needs to be more than looked at. It's impacting the quality of life in Mitchell County. It's impacting the quality of water in Mitchell County. And it's impacting property values, especially for those people that have to live by a hog confinement in Mitchell County. And you can do your own research. They can say all they want about how it's going to contribute to the economy. When research has been done, it's been found that hog confinements, in fact, don't really contribute that much to the economy of the counties where they're located. Thank you.
Can I talk again? Penny mentioned how many hogs in Mitchell County. According to the USDA, 2007, there were 533,000 hogs. 2012, 593,000. 11% increase, 2.2% per year. If Mitchell County followed the state average, it's greatly more, probably 50% more, although that map shows, and as we all know by looking around, this is a target, so it's probably more than that. When you figure that each hog puts out on average 1.3 gallons of or per day. It's not hard to figure where we're at. And if I may, this karst issue always comes up with the county engineer, Carrie Comment. He's the authority.
We have it.
We have it. And I have a question for you. Doing a little research, I found a 1984 geological study in Mitchell County. And it had in there what they call incipient karst mentioned. I couldn't find too much mention anywhere else. And basically it was an area from just east of Little Cedar River, pretty much all the way to Osage. And it said in that area, although the ground is flat and you do not see any superficial or obvious sinkholes, the sinkholes are under the ground, filled with earth. They're filled in, so you can't see them. And that the ground is so flat, everything just sits there. So everything you put in the ground there goes into these sinkholes and into our water supply. Is that still relevant? Or?
I haven't looked at the maps, but I know that there are areas in the county that, you know, people wonder where the water goes, and it's obviously going into the karst. I mean, you look at the Lime Kiln Road, for example, it's between the Cedar River and Osage, and when you look at the water coming through Highway 9, you know, they put the triple 14 box culverts in when we had the flood. Not a normal, there's always water flowing through there, but when you get down to Lime Kiln, it's always dry. So you know there's fractures in the rock, and that water's going down. So I mean, it's around.
What surprised me was, though, that you said in these relatively flat areas that it's still there, even though we can't visually see it. It's
Yeah,
still happening.
there's spots around the county where there's culverts that, you know, there's culverts under the roadways that are equalizers or just locations that are low that don't ever hold water. I mean,
Yeah.
there should be culverts there and they're not because the water seeps down into the soil. It's just a natural thing, but
Should be very concerned, it isn't very concerning. Thank you. I'm done.
Well, once county engineer showed up, that does report.
Sorry.
should be lifting some pipe in the ground 340 today on that structure. Turning the hydraulic to be for 390th, we'll see if that happens. That 390th is a level B road, putting triple pins in there